Is it 4 o'clock yet? Can somebody give me the thumbs up? It is 4 o'clock. Everyone else who's going to join us from now on is welcome, but we're not waiting for anyone else before we start. So, a big round. All right, get a move on. Come in here. This is the fantastic room, Bangkok 3. Hello, everybody. Good of you to find this room. Of course, this is part of the Global Media Forum 2018, and here will take place the session Game Changers, ? Women in the Media Business. Now, as you can see, I myself am a woman, and I work in the media business. I'm a freelancer, actually. I'm a business anchor at DW. And in the next 80 minutes or so, we want to shed some light on the role of high-positioned women in the media. Who are these women? How did they get into those positions? What are they doing once they're in that position? And how can their leadership, but also the leadership of other women, perhaps be a game changer in the media landscape? These are the kind of questions that we want to address. We means you. I include you because, as I'm sure you will have noticed, this is not the traditional theater setup. This is what is originally called a fish bowl. As we had to rearrange the chairs in order to get all the camera angles right. Somebody mentioned this is more like a fish banana, but it will work. It will work with your help, because the idea is that I will introduce the panelists, 5 women. They will take a seat, and it's 5 of them, but we have 6 seats. That means the 6th seat, right at the beginning, I will take it, but only for the opening round. And after that, and that's why I'm wearing comfy shoes today, I'm happy to stand and leave that chair for one of you. Not for the entire session, you don't need to panic. But if you would like to ask a question because you found it so intriguing what you heard, or you disagree with it, then you have to raise your hand so I can see you. And then I can say, would you like to take a seat? And you take a seat, and we take it from there. You ask a question, you make your comment, you engage in the discussion, and then I'll say thank you very much, you go back to your seat, and we do the same with someone else. This is the idea. If you would like to engage, but you do not feel comfortable with the idea of taking a seat, then no pressure. You can still raise your hand. I will still ask you, would you like to take a seat? And you say, oh, I'd rather stay where I am. That is okay. Then I will grab a phone, and I will come to you. Okay, so the basic idea is clear. We also, as you know, have a live stream of what's happening right now. The cameras here, whenever there's the red light, somebody will see you sitting there in the background. You all look great, don't worry about that. But because we do have a live stream, it means hopefully there are people somewhere on the outside watching this. And maybe they want to engage in this discussion as well. Well, I cannot promise that it'll work, but we do have, obviously, a Twitter account. And it is not just the Global Media Forum Twitter account, which you can see down there, hashtag DW, line GMF. It is an additional hashtag, Women Media Business. And when you go onto that Twitter account, first of all, you can tweet about the session, which is brilliant, but you could also, if you watch us from the outside, you can make a comment, or you can send also a question. And if time allows, and if we can keep an eye on it, then we will include it in the debate. Before I ask the panelists to take their seats, let us first find out who you, the audience, are, because I'm going to introduce them. I already told you who I am. You don't have to do it individually. We don't have time for that. But as this is a session on women in the media business, hands up. Who are women in the media business? Okay. Who are men in the media business? Do we have anyone who is not in the media business but interested? Okay. Okay. So observers, which brings me to the next question. What do you expect from this session? Why did you choose to come here? And this is my first attempt to get somebody find somebody who is courageous enough to say something. Any of those who are not in the media business already in the frame of mind to give me an idea why they chose this session? Yep.
I'm very interested in this session because I would love to know people who are in the same right mind and would like to start into the media business. Because I'm at the moment not really working full-time anymore because I'm studying now in Deutsche Welle Academy. I'm working with a publishing house in Malaysia, and it's book-related. And I would like to transfer this book or narrative story into other medium, and I'd love to know more about it.
Okay, fair enough. Anyone else of perhaps the women in the media business? What do you hope to learn from this session? This could also be a nice input for the debate already. Okay, then I'm doing the work first. The next question to you, and that's the last one, is very, very easy. Hands up. Who comes from the region, because we have different regions here, the region that would include Latin America and Central America? 5. Okay. Who from Asia? Southeast. Everything that has Asia in it in one shape or another. Okay. Europe. Quite well represented. And North America. Good. Have I left out something? Africa, of course. But I have to say, from what I can see, which is quite a challenge here, it's quite well balanced. Well, I think it's time for us to get to know who we're actually talking with. Please welcome the panelists, and you may applaud now, not when I introduce them, because then you can't hear it. So please give a very warm welcome to the panelists who I'm going to announce. Great. And we have here Jimena Saldaña. She's the director of Canal 11 in Mexico, which is the country's first public TV station. Jimena, do take a seat. And what I can tell you already from what we've been talking about before, she's a woman in the leadership position, obviously, and one of the main drivers for her channel is to boost the dialogue in society about inclusion and equality before the law. There is much more, but she'll tell us all about it herself. Then also please give a warm welcome to Joyce Mavil, the only woman managing a broadcasting station in Tanzania. She's the managing director of ITV, which includes a lot of channels, Capital TV, Radio 1. And she says something remarkable, which I certainly want to know more about. She says, I don't accept or deal with any problems. I envy her. Please welcome Janine Stein. She's editorial director and owner of Content Asia, based in Singapore. Content Asia is an information platform that includes a variety of media outlets. She's worked for a few years in African media before heading to Asia, so she can give us a sense from both regions. And she's very much into networking, especially for women, and she created something that I called Women's Lunch, but it actually has a different name, but she's going to tell us all about that as well. Then we have Yulia McGuffey. She's editor-in-chief of the news website NVUA in Ukraine. And when I opened that website, I couldn't read it because I couldn't find the button for English or for German. Probably it's there, but I couldn't find it. And so I have to believe what she tells me. It's the most popular and the best media in the country. And because this is women in the media business, I also learned that, yes, she has found that certainly at the beginning that maybe it's a bit more difficult to make your way in, but that takes maybe 5 minutes, and then what counts is what you can do. I translated something that I was given in German into English, and I hope it's not offensive in English. Basically what she's trying to say, it's not about what's in your trousers, but what's in your head and heart. It takes self-confidence. And then, last but not least, Marcena Suhan, editor-in-chief of Onet PL, which is in Poland. And Marcena has the big challenge. She's actually wearing 2 hats every day. She manages other journalists, and she's a journalist herself. And wearing these 2 hats at the same time can be tricky, and I'm sure we will learn more about that and much more. So for this very first round, I'm going to take a seat, but after that, I'll keep my eyes peeled to see your hands up in the air, because that's what we're here for. So let's look at the situation right now and how we got there from your perspective. Each and every one of you has been in the media business for 10 years, maybe even more. I can say from my perspective, being in the media business for some almost 20 years and being here in Germany, when I found that this is the topic of this session, I was wondering, what does it aim at? Because I'm surrounded by women in the media, and I'm not just talking about the low positions. I'm talking also about leading positions. We also have a director here of a big German station, which isn't far away from here, based in Cologne. So why is that an issue? But then, of course, maybe it is an issue where you're from, and maybe it's changed over the years. So do tell us a little bit about how the conditions for women are right now where you're from, and how did you get there? Jimena, let's start with you.
Thank you, Monica. First of all, thank you all for being here. And it's such a nice forum to express our opinions and to share the experience that we've had. I can say that in Mexico, when I first became involved in the media, I was involved in a multimedia group more than 30 years ago. And of course, it has changed a lot indeed. I believe that written press used to be a world closed for women. It was almost for men, and you'd have to go to very lower positions to start your way up. I believe that reporters have faced that in Mexico for many years. However, I found it to be so different now. I have to say that public television throughout the country in different TV stations have more women right now in power than any other times. Compared to commercial TV, it's not the case. It's a bit strange still that hasn't come to a point where I think it's more men predominant. But I've also found it to understand that women that get to positions where you really take decisions are not really an obstacle also for them to achieve if you don't find it to be a gender conflict. I think you have to focus on an objective and then reach out for it. And I think that has helped a lot of women to get to positions in Mexico, and I believe it will carry on like that. And I think it's also important to say that it also comes hand by hand with the way women are represented in the political arena. I think that has included more women also in the media, and that's very important. And I find it to be truly enthusiastic now in the digital world, where you find more and more women involved.
Yeah, I mean, we have at least 3 here on the panel who have high positions in digital media. Thank you very much. We only have 3 microphones, so yes, you will have to share. Joyce, the only woman in a leadership position at a broadcaster in Tanzania, and someone who won't accept problems. Tell us more about that.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I was appointed to the position 17 years ago this year as the only woman managing director in television and radio. To date, I'm still the only one. And when I was appointed that position, one of the things I made a decision about was, how do I want to be perceived? Do I want to be perceived as a woman who has been given a position? Or do I want to be perceived as a professional who deserves to be in that position? And from that time, I've been passing on this, I always call it living my story in others, that it is possible for anyone to be anybody in any position, as long as you have to accept first and foremost that you are a professional first. It's got nothing to do with your gender. And I've managed to be able to take along a lot of women. And I'm not being biased, I'm just being honest, that I believe that the best way to make women deliver is by making sure that they're in decision-making positions, where they actually have the final say. So I think I've succeeded in that, at least in my company, and I've also influenced a lot of women outside, even politicians, which I find strange because I always believe that politicians are another world. They do their own thing their own way. They've got their own culture. But I always believe that the best person to do a good job is a person who believes that they are a professional. So that's all I can say about that. And the company I'm managing is a private company. It's owned by a private, it's a family company owned by a private Tanzanian. Yeah.
May I just ask one follow-up question there? Because when you say you are still the only woman in such a position, and you've been in that position, as you say, through your work also, you basically promote women in the sense, you know, have the right mindset and give them responsibility.
Yes.
How come there aren't more by now?
I don't want to be judgmental, but I believe that some of the women, maybe not all of them, some of the women, when they are given the opportunity to a certain position, they tend to believe first and foremost that I cannot do it. But I don't believe in that. I believe that as long as they saw I can do it, I'm going to grab the chance and show that I can actually do it. You know, so that's one of the things I may be wrong, but that's the feeling I keep on getting, that people tend to think like, no, that's just too much for me, which I think is not the right set of mind, and it's not the right way to do it. Because that's the only way we can move forward into decision-making positions, is by taking the opportunities given to us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Janine, take the opportunity and grab that mic. And when we were talking just before over a cup of coffee, and I told you that this round will be like that, with basically one question, and you all tell us a bit about yourself. You were like, how much time do I have? Because there is so much to tell, starting in African media, then moving to Asian media. And which story did you decide to tell us then in this time?
It's just because I've been doing the same thing. I call myself a journalist. I wear a lot of different hats, but in my heart, I'm a journalist. And I've been a journalist since I was 17. So it's 40 years. I've never worked in a free speech environment. So I've always reserved the right to say what I think in a qualified way because of various levels of trouble you can get into, first in South Africa. So I decided to be a journalist and a lawyer under apartheid South Africa. That was the stupidity of youth or the idealism of youth. I thought I could make a difference. I gave up law because I was one of 3 people in the class, and I got tired of my professor saying women shouldn't be lawyers, and the journalists were having more fun. So I started working. They were having loads more fun, and it was also a lot less work. It seemed like something that I could cleave to, and it's proved correct. So I worked in South Africa for 5 or 6 years. Left one day and went to Hong Kong. So I worked in Hong Kong under British rule for 12 years, and then I moved to Singapore in 2000. So that's kind of my history. I started my own company, Content Asia, in 2005, simply because I got really tired of male publishers telling me what I could and couldn't write, mostly for commercial reasons, not for political reasons. I think politics is much easier to defend your line. Commercial reasons, interview this person because they're an advertiser, is really irritating. And there's nothing to debate. So I started my own company, absolutely determined that it would have integrity. We have hired men in the past that haven't worked out so well maybe because of the kind of men I hired, but they walked in and kind of wanted to take over. And I think men have the men I hired have an inherent right, feel they have a right to command the environment they're in. And I've always sort of admired that, not wanted to emulate it, but wanted to emulate it a little bit. But the women, my team has been very stable for the last 12 years, and they're amazing. We don't work in a free speech environment. A lot of Asia doesn't work in a free speech environment. So the line you walk to tell the truth is sometimes a thin one, but there are incredibly powerful women in Asian media. We have sitting over there who gets 60 million page views a day. We have Mi Fong with a camera on my face, who has been in the media for almost as long as I have. There are really, really strong women role models. For my company, I've always maintained that integrity is the core of what we do. So we tell the truth and we keep our integrity. Commercially, I've been criticized for it as not being commercially sensitive. That basically usually means you're not writing what the advertiser wants. And somehow, I don't have a magic wand, but somehow we've kept alive and kept afloat and kept profitable, even though we tend to stay on the line of, we won't write something just because someone advertises. So, sorry, that's a long-winded way of saying we can't be influenced. And I think ultimately that integrity lets me sleep at night and lets my team sleep at night, because as much pressure as they're under, they know I have their back. As far as women's networking, I feel that women don't have the same kind of forums as men do. So women might not be as conscious of the mark they make as the first impression. Men are very, usually walk into the room, they make a first impression, they tell you what they want. Women, generalization and apologies for it, but we tend to think that my work will speak for itself, and invariably it doesn't. So the opportunity for women to meet other women and to network, it started out random, maybe 5 women, maybe 50 women. Some of our events now, 150 and 200 women who feel the opportunity to share their stories with each other without men around. We were saying as well a little bit earlier that this is evolving. Women have realized that they can't do it without men. It's not a one-gender world, and that so a lot of my events now do include men. There's a female focus, and men are coming to the table and they are saying, I want to participate in this. And I find that very encouraging. Yeah. So I'll stop talking now. That's my story.
We have a lot of men here wanting to participate in this session.
And it's really important that men do get involved in the conversation, because otherwise we're talking to ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly, Janine. And this women's lunch, I'll pick up later again. But what I get that, I mean, your company prevailed, even though you say you're not commercial enough, you have integrity, but you're walking a fine line in an environment where freedom of speech cannot be taken for granted.
Shouldn't be taken for granted.
Right. Julia.
Yeah, I started my career when I was 19 years old. It was 1994. There was no internet, and there was no women editors-in-chief, actually, or if there was any, probably I didn't know about. It was probably like a talking dog in the circus, if you know what I mean. In the year of 2000, when I joined a new team to do a news website, there was a small amount of internet, just couple of news websites, and still actually no women in almost no digital, and no women in digital on high editorial positions. I mean, editors-in-chief or so on. And now it's the year 2018. 18. I'm in all this media editorial. For me, it's not a business. I always was an editorial person. So, but now, like in media business, in my country, there are around probably 60-70% of so. At the high editorial positions, 70% they're taken by women. So if you take like 10, 15 most popular news websites in my country, they are run by women. And I would like to say that actually new media, digital media, they open just so many chances, and women, like great women, smart women, just filled it. And now I would say that like in content, in editorial, I would say they're like dominating in the informational landscapes. And actually to be honest, I had a lot of chances to emigrate because I used to get married to a British guy, and that is why that's my surname came from. But I Actually, I choose not to because I really loved what I was doing, and actually then I left my husband and got married to my job, and sort of, yeah, because I spent there quite a lot of time, and that's now how it goes. And now I'm editor-in-chief of like one of the biggest and one of the best digital media in the country, and we're developing fast, and I think I'm really lucky to do what I do.
So online news is dominated by women, at least in Ukraine, 70%.
Yeah, I would say so, and it's not only about like even editors-in-chief. It's also about like members of editorials, because we don't have enough guys actually. So there are mostly girls.
That's one explanation. Yeah. Yes, Maszena, in Poland, it's also an online platform.
Yes, Onet is originally digital. It was founded 22 years ago. I'm working here since 17 years. So, but 21 years in media business, media industry. So I saw a lot. I've got a lot of experience, but I'm lucky to come from the country which is a country of strong women actually, and we can see it in our history. For example, in 1919, which is quite early, we got a right to vote.
Almost 100 years
yes,
next year. Yeah?
Yes, exactly. It's very good what happened in our history. Now we have quite low payment gap, gender payment gap. Mm-hmm. It's 7.2, not such a big one. Looking at the whole European Union, it's very good score. So it's not that bad. My personal experience is also my mom, who was a really strong woman. Unfortunately, she died when I was 16, but she was able to implement all of her knowledge, of her what was important for me during these 16 years. So it also is a proof of being really powerful woman. We had also a lot of protests this year, this and last year in Poland, and the only protest which was successful was women protests. It was against making law in terms of abortion more restrictive, and under the pressure of women, our government changed the plans, and this was the only one successful protest. So we are really powerful, and the same situation is in the media industry. We have a lot of women in really high positions, especially in digital media, which is, I believe, also it's a very good culture. We have young companies, not with very fresh culture, so it is helpful. It is helpful as well. And one more thought, when I remember when I was entering the media environment, I had an impression that we have to behave more like men. And now, after 21 years, I feel I can be myself. I don't have to pretend to be men, and that's a good news. We still have a lot to achieve or to do, but definitely the atmosphere is different.
And that even though in your country women were allowed to vote next year, 100 years ago, it's a country where women are strong, as you say, and still you felt that you had to be more male in order to get into the job, get into the business. That is interesting, I find.
Luckily, it's changing. Yeah. I felt 20 years ago, I felt that I have to be much more masculine. I have to fight with kind of their weapon, not mine. And now I feel we have lots of discussion. We have panels like that, and this is very good that we have these discussions. And so something is changing, something is going forward, and that's a good news.
Thank you. So now you know a little bit more about the ladies here in our fish banana. Anyone here already burning to ask a question? Would you like to come here, or this is your chair? It's absolutely okay. Yes, yes, I stand by what I said. But do please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Simba Chikanza, yes, and I am a founder of Zimbabwe's most read independent online publication on news, and we've been running for about 11 years to date. So, shall I go into my question now?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. My question goes to Janine, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Janine or Janine Stein. Thank you. You said that you found that men are bossy, or that men are controlling. Yeah, those were exact words. Sorry?
I generalized, but yeah, I found that.
Yes,
Sorry.
okay. Right.
I suspect
Don't you think that your generalization is misleading? It creates an inequality. And I'm saying this also repenting before the host here, everyone was here, because I've also generalized, although from the opposite. I have thought that women are bossy. I have thought, I don't do it anymore. I don't think so anymore. I have to, but I want to be frank. I'll tell you the other generalization that I've had is that a lot of women can't say sorry. Yes.
No, could you clarify? Do you mean sorry in private life, or do you mean sorry in a working environment because you feel they're afraid of showing weakness? Or in which context do you feel they can't say sorry?
But I'm talking about the work environment right now. Not every woman, by the way, because others I have noticed, they are quite relatable. But one of my challenges...
Okay, so that's maybe not a gender thing, but just specific people you met. When you say you met some who were easier to deal with.
That's right. This is why I said, these are very, very unhealthy generalizations that we encounter, particularly in positions of leadership. And I would like to say, my personal view is that we need to look at rather concepts rather than people or a particular sex. So if we look at a behavioral aspect, that because a behavioral aspect, something can occur maybe as a consequence of an event. So coming back to my question to you is, don't you think that is an unhealthy thing, which creates inequality?
Not necessarily unhealthy. It's part of my learning. When I was hiring, I didn't ask the kind of questions that gave the people I was hiring a situation. How would you deal with? I have to say, it's my inexperience and it is my learning. So we've hired 3 men in 12 years. Each of them tried to restructure the company within 3 months of being there, regardless. And the restructure, some of the ideas were not terrible, but it was all designed around their needs. And I think that when you may have few of them, grew up in a family where they were the son. And if you're a son in a Chinese family or a son in certain families, the world revolves around you. And you learn, it's all you know, a world that revolves around you. So you recreate that wherever you go. I've envied that ability sometimes, but our team is very collaborative. It's small. At its biggest, it was like 10 people. So it's a really tiny team. It's collaborative. We behave like we're 50 people, which means everybody has to do 5 jobs. It's a startup. I've kept that startup energy, And to have one person come in and try and impose their will on everybody was disruptive for everyone. So it wasn't a decision that I made by myself to exit them. It was a team decision because they didn't fit in, and I took responsibility for that. It was my fault. But I've seen in my life, in my personal life as well, when mothers bring up sons to believe they're God, they can't help but act like God everywhere they go. And it's not there necessarily. It's not a fault. It's just a reality. So your partner will structure your lives to revolve around him. And sometimes very unconscious. And it takes a strong guy to say, it's unconscious. I can change that. So yes, it's a broad generalization, but it's what I have as my experience. And I admit it was my failure and my learning. So when we hire now, we work with, I work very closely with my digital agency, run mostly by men. So there is a woman, but it's all men. And we get along great because I've learned to communicate better. And I think if women, possibly the most important lesson I've learned in my career is say what you want. Say it. Like, don't be scared to come across as bold, cheeky, rude, whatever. Just as long as you say it in a kind voice, in a nice voice, this is what I need. People can respond to you rather than assuming people can read your mind. So.
And Jimena would like to join before you may take it in another direction. Just please.
Thank you, Monica. I just wanted to add that I relate too much to what Janine was saying about, the way we bring up our children. And I must say Mexico has a very traditional society, and however that is changing, but I also believe it's a very good factor that media can take over. Right now, as a public television, what we're trying to do is reach out on an educational basis, especially to girls, so that they can start imagining themselves in the future like entrepreneurs or like involved in engineering, science, technology. There's actually an OECD program, and we as a public television, we're joining that program to put role models on the screen so that girls can relate to this idea, and stop this what you were saying, where you get to places where people tell you this is not for females, this is mostly meant for boys, or this is something men should do. And I think that barrier can be just crossed out because of the work that we do around the media. So I believe it's very important that we focus on education on that way, to put role models on the screen so that, girls can look up to that. And I think, again, it's not a matter of gender or generalizing, because we find, many people, and if you need us to say we're sorry, I think we carry on, I think, as women, and I think you must relate to this guilt the whole time, because sometimes we want to work, but we're leaving our husbands or we're leaving our kids, and still we carry on and we deal with that. So I believe that women know how to say I'm sorry, but especially we should now focus on how to use our voices. And I do believe, again, that digital world, is bringing that to real life for women.
How does a woman director influence the program? Because you just mentioned about, the trying to, through the programming, somehow bring about a discussion about social inclusion, about gender equality, about education. Is that because you are a woman in that position? Does it take a woman to think like that?
I think right now it does a bit, but I think that by the time, many men are joining this idea. For instance, what we do in Canal 11, and I find it to be a very good example, is that on talk shows or debates or roundtables, we always must include a woman. I'm against thinking that there are no women experts in any different areas. So sometimes they're hard to find and they're hard to get there. But one of the things that I have established as a policy, and it's been very well accepted by men and women in Canal 11, is that we should always have female representation on the programs. And I do believe this is something that media has to pay more attention to. If you're putting on in the screen a TV show, there must be women represented there. And it's not a policy of gender, again. It's a way to show that we're experts and that there are women experts in every different area. So I think this is something key that Canal 11 as a TV public station is doing right now, and I think it's very well accepted.
And to this, what the gentleman said about women not saying sorry, maybe not all of them, but some of them. I remember you sent me something beforehand where you said that probably at the start of your career, from what I got, somebody told you that you have very thin-skinned, i.e. too sensitive, and that will definitely stand in your way. And from what I get, you admit to being sensitive, but that is an advantage. How can this be related, that being sensitive but maybe not showing it too much could perhaps be the thing that stands in the way? Not the fact that one is sensitive, but that you don't want to show it.
That's really interesting, and I have to say to you that I'm sorry for all the time, yeah. Like I feel sorry for 1,000 things, and I really, it's just my treat, and I'm feeling comfortable right now with that. It's not a big problem. But talking about being emotional, because I have to admit I'm an emotional person, and for many years I heard this argument as something wrong. You're too emotional, and your cost will be too big to be, for example, the boss, and we will not promote you because you're too fragile. It will cost you too much emotions. And that's why I said at the beginning that I can feel that something is changing, that I can be a woman, a sensitive, emotional woman in a quite high position. And and I can see that other people also see that being fragile and emotional is nothing wrong. It can be, everything can be right or wrong. If you say being emotional by arguing all the time or being rude for other people, this is wrong. But being emotional is also saying good things in a spontaneous way to the people. It's also supporting people. It's a lot of very, very good things. And from here, I want to support every fragile and emotional person, because you are not wrong. It's just your type of personality, and it's good. And one more thing, it's hard to imagine not emotional journalists, because this profession is about emotions. Obviously, when we talk about news, it's easy the news can be sometimes wrote by artificial intelligence. But we are not going to be replaced by the artificial intelligence so easy, because of emotions we have to put into our work, because it's about telling people's stories.
And Julia.
I would also like to add to this emotional thread. I would say I'm really emotional person, and women are more emotional, I think, than men. And I've been thinking whether it influences the news coverage, the priorities, and yes, it does, of course. But I would say that it helps to deliver important social or different issues, because when you're emotional and when you've got when you're emotionally involved, you can pick up that angle of the story which will make a difference among your readers, whether it's issues of domestic violence or of gay women or kids with cancer. And so I'm usually working with an editorial. I'm always telling Guy that let's do that, this is important, and let's talk about it. And even people don't want to read about sad stuff, we should do it anyway and raise those issues. And so that's when emotions do a good thing.
So do women in charge of the media in a position pick different topics That's what I sort of hear. I mean, you focus, maybe you see the news out there, and you say, this is important. And maybe you choose something else as being important than the male equivalent in your position would have picked.
I don't think that's the way to do it. I believe the most important thing is to let the people who are in charge of dealing with stories to do the editorial part, because I don't deal with editorial. Okay. And when it comes to choosing stories, it means that if you play with your emotions and you cross the line, then you become part of the story instead of being part of the solution, or finding or putting the story out there for people to put in their contribution so that a solution can be found. So to me, I believe that being emotional in this profession is very dangerous, because you will forget your responsibility and you won't be able to see things clearly, because now you're so much emotionally involved and you've crossed the line. So emotions have to be there, because at the end of the day, we are human beings, you know, but we should not allow that emotion to cross the line. So for the editorial department to be independent, I always avoid saying you do that story or do this story or do that. I avoid that. I'd rather be the objective eye, you know, in the sense when balancing the story, or maybe the coverage or something else has to be done as extra to beef up the story. I'd rather be that objective eye than be involved in choosing that do this story or do that story or don't do that story at all. Yeah.
So we've got, and while we hand the mic, just one, when you say you don't want to be editorial, you still choose, yeah, but you still make a decision like, this is the editor for this kind of story. Maybe not the specific story, but like, he's the editor for everything that goes on in Tanzania on a local level. He's the one, or she's the one doing it. Does it make, how do you choose them? Is it then purely based on, I mean, is there, sometimes you say, well, she's a great editor, I sent her to this particular job because what she brings towards it as a woman. Does that play a role? And if so, what's the criteria you're looking at?
First and foremost, they have to do it professionally. They have to be professional in what they're doing. That I've got to make sure that whatever coverage I'm going to be doing out there is properly balanced, the topic is properly researched, and all the people who are supposed to be part and parcel of the story have to be reached out so that they can give in their input. That's what we do. And of course, definitely, you have to make the decision of saying who is strong in a particular type of coverage, be it in health, be it in, you know, whatever the topic is. That is important. Otherwise, you can't be having Tom today, Mary next day. Then you kind of lose the balance, and your strength as a media house will never come out. That this media house, when they deal with this kind of stories, they're very good. So you've got to put that right type of person. Be it a man or a woman, to me, I always feel like I'd rather deal with professionals than saying, I want this woman to take this position. No. You may put a woman there because it's a number, but then they don't deliver. I don't think, that's not the way how we look at it. We look at it that we need to have professionals regardless of the gender.
Does any one of you want to sit there? Because it's so much easier for me to keep an eye on the person with a microphone in their hands, and you look so gorgeous. Yeah. And I'm a woman, I'm allowed to say that. It's not sexist.
Okay, I'll take the seat.
Take a seat. And you've got the microphone, right? Super.
Let me take up from, I have a couple of comments and a question. Let me take up from where you stopped. I think, yes, well, I respect, oh, I'm sorry. My name is Haji Hassani. I work with the Voice of Nigeria. I'm from Nigeria. Yes, I respect the fact that as a business person, you have to take certain tough decisions to put the right people with the right skills at the right places. But that's for you who is just looking at it from the perspective of a businesswoman. For those of us who work in the media, and the media is also our business, I think the perspective is completely different. Because if you're the editorial chief, and you're also the owner or the managing director, you naturally will see things from different prisms. And those prisms will include deciding to put a woman there because you need that emotion to be part of what she brings out. The reason being, the story of women are not told by everybody. They're told by women. And this is a reality. It's not a concept that you just throw on the background and say, oh, don't worry, you know, somebody will tell the story. If you leave it to the media, the hard media as we know them, believe you me sincerely, most stories of women will never get told. That's the truth. Even if they are told, they're not told from the prism of the woman. And whether we like it or not, we're created with certain emotions, certain hormones. And those hormones add value to how we see stories, how we analyze those stories, the kind of perspective that we bring to bear. Yes, for patriarchal societies like mine in Nigeria, it's easy for women to just say, oh, you know, it's a man's world. In my media, I've worked in Voice of Nigeria now 28 years. And up till today, we only have one woman as top management. And that's me. And it's been hell. It's been hell. Thank you, but it's been hell. And right now what I've done is, because you cannot just place people, they need the experience, they need the expertise. You need to train them, you need to groom them, you need to mentor them. We have decided that in my department, which of course I agree with all of you, digital media is a platform for all women now. So I created the digital media, I moved people there. 75% of the people in digital media today in Voice of Nigeria are women. And we're grooming them, we're growing that population so they can take control when the time comes. But we cannot rely on the rest of the media to tell our stories or to tell the story from our prisms. They don't have what it takes to do that. They don't have those hormones. We need those hormones to actively tell our stories and tell them right. Thank you.
This lady has a question, but please stay there because I have a question for you as well in a second.
Yes, my name is Akua, a journalist and politician and a former ambassador of Ghana to Germany. I have founded a community radio station in Ghana, and the problem for us, basically, most women owners of media, is funding. You go to the bank, because you don't have the collateral, it's difficult to raise the funds. You go to your family people, and they come with all kinds of conditions. So can anybody here advise on very innovative ways of raising funds to run female-owned media?
I happen to know that Janine has done quite a lot of research in that field and interviewed quite a lot of people.
I think, honestly, women are not as, another generalization, the art of presentation, the art of going in front of venture capitalists, in front of mostly men who are going to ask you really hard questions because they don't care about your business, they don't care about your values, they don't care about anything to do with you, your kids, your school, your breakfast. They just don't care. They care about, when am I going to get my money back? What's my exit strategy? And too many women don't have that hardcore PowerPoint skills to be able to present in a room like that. So that's number one. Number two is branding and image, because when you walk into a room and you do that whole power moves, you actually exude a different level of confidence. As that whole God thing with men being brought up to walk into a room and command the room, women need to learn some of that. You walk in and you don't let people interrupt you, and you use a good voice, not a whine, not speak loudly, not a soft voice. So you walk in, you find your voice, you say what you need to say, what you need to get. And it is hard to get money, but so hard to get money. I used all my savings to start my company because I didn't want to be answerable. I didn't know if this was going to work. Honestly, I did not want to be answerable to anybody else. I had spent my whole career working for publishers who were men. I never had a woman publisher. And business people take a different view of journalism on the whole. So which is why you need a great managing director and a great publisher to stand between you and the publisher. Now, sadly or fortunately for me, I'm the publisher and the editorial director. So on some days I fight with myself, which is a strange position. But in terms of getting money, I used my own money. And I was never answerable to anybody. So when someone said, can I talk to your boss? Do you know who I am? I have $50,000, but I want this. I could happily say no. Because I never had, and still to this day don't have, a board of directors forcing me to do anything. And that I didn't have a lot of money. If you knew how much I had, you would be shocked and horrified. But I never had anything new. If I spend money on a grapefruit, I would write it down because that had to go in my budget. To the point where my accountant at some point said to me after 3 or 4 years, you can stop writing down 30 cents for grapefruit. It doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter now. You can buy as many grapefruit as you want. So I was just very conscious. I was very concerned. But as where to get money from today, I do think there's a lot of money. It comes with strings. It's always going to come with strings. Money's never free. You just have to make that decision. Can I deal with the strings? Or get a great managing director that's going to be happy to deal with those strings, because nothing is for free, and not one penny that you raise from any market is going to be free.
I have
Sorry, I hope
two.
that's helpful.
No, it's but I've got two over here, one gentleman here, and now one here. Which one is directly connected to what we just heard? You.
From a male perspective.
From a male perspective.
Yes, from a male perspective. Get ready to hear something really, really contrary.
But stand up. If you're a male perspective, stand up,
Thank
please.
Right. It's not really contrary, believe me. I also shared exactly the same experience as you, even though I'm a male, of starting a whole work and with nothing. We started our publication. I was approached by the opposition party in our country in 2007, started a publication for them, ran it for a few months, and then decided to leave because I felt I would not succeed operating under a political dictation. So eventually we started ZimI in the end of 2007 with nothing. I was a student at that time, and I did just about what used, you know, even my own student allowances. I never bought a car. I used to put that to pay journalists. So we at that time, we had freelancers in Zimbabwe. So I just pay them. Eventually, because a structure was building up, our team over here in the diaspora started to come particularly from, these were mainly volunteers, because they felt they had a shared ownership. So eventually, over the years, especially from around 2010, 2011, 2012, we were run purely and entirely by volunteers. One thing that I can definitely say to you, ma'am, and I would like to meet you even afterwards, I've said this to one of the ladies here as well, is you don't need money from anyone. You just need you.
Yeah, your passion.
And I've demonstrated that. I've been offered millions by politicians from all divides, from the ruling parties and the PF. I want to tell you, I have not received a penny. I've refused. I've also refused Western money. And I'm glad I did that at a time when it was so hard. One thing I could ask you in brief, because I don't want to take too much time here. I said, you don't need anyone's money, you just need you. One of the easiest ways to fundraise is to target what's trending. And you just be you. Handle some of those hot topics, and you can attract traffic from all over the world just by targeting what is trending today. And believe me, you'll make it. We've been running our publication right now, and we are the leading independent online media next to Google only in Zimbabwe and outside of Zimbabwe, with no Western money and no money from capitalists. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a date. You have a date. This gentleman now.
My question is for the...
Who are you?
Tim Ailey from ABC Australia. My question is about the pace of change can be so slow in the media, but then I think about finance industries as well, where there's a chronic underrepresentation of women, particularly in leadership roles. So my question is, what do you think of quotas in taking more radical steps? What do we think of quotas in terms of new hires?
Who would like to start? Jimena.
I'm just going to say I'm against quotas. I totally believe it's a very unfair way to deal with any kind of issues. I've also involved in sports, and I've always thought that the leadership is something women should get to without the gender problem. I totally believe, as I was saying at the beginning of the speech this morning, is that really you have to fix an objective and get to it. You don't have to think about gender or fighting a man or thinking if the world is too unfair for women or not. I think you just have to get there, and through leadership, good management, governance, transparency, you can get anything you want. So I'm totally against quotas.
I'm for and against quotas. So I'm very often you need quotas in order to raise the level of, in order to open the way for people. So, for instance, a lot of South African companies are compelled to hire more diversely than they were. So if you say the best person for the job is the white guy who comes from a top school, who has had all the privilege in the world. Sadly, that's going to be the best person for the job because all the advantage was his. If you never open a way for women who may have not had the opportunity to go to a proper university because whatever, there were 5 places and they all went to men whose fathers went to the school, whose uncles went to the school. The focus on diversity supersedes. Sometimes you can't run your company into the ground, but diversity supersedes ability in some situations. And if people are given a chance, and given proper support, given the tools that they need to grow into the job, they will. Tokenism is a terrible thing because it creates insecurity, instability. The person who's put into a token job, it can't function, or throw him or herself out of a window because of the pressure of being someone that they're not. So I don't think tokenism is good, but I think quotas can work if properly managed.
Do we have enough mics in the round? Yeah.
Actually, quotas sound like a sort of regulation. I'm against regulations, and if I were taken on some position by quota, I would be even sort of offended, probably. Probably it's my personal perception of the situation, but I would prefer to compete in a fair play with anyone, men, women. So I'm against quotas. Yeah.
I'm against as well, but the problem is that whenever you are creating a group, it's so easy to find only men in this group. So I'm totally against quotas, but I'm for thinking that sometimes it's good to have at least one woman in a group, whichever group is it. So it's something I learned not so far away from my friend in our company. She came from public TV, which was not very friendly for women. And she, even if we are digital company, she started to point that topic, yeah, that if we have, I don't know, jury, because we choose the best article of the month, we should have in the jury at least one woman. And I saw how it changes the perspective of the men, of our bosses. And it was really short time to change thinking and to involve women more in this decision process. So no quotas, think.
There's a reason why I asked you to stay here, and there's a gentleman who is going to ask a question or make a comment in a second, but it's because you are at least the 4th woman in the media business here who stressed how, if you like, dominant women are in online media. So, if you like, do we need a quota for men in online media, just to turn it around? But I'm intrigued. Why is that? Why is digital media more women-friendly, more career-friendly for women? Why is it not the same if you say, well, it's become, women are usually nice to look at, so why is it not in the other media, or have nice voices in radio, or behind the scenes, obviously, where it counts even more? Why in digital media? Can someone explain that to me? would you like her? You give me your perspective first.
My perspective would be, let me start by asking you a similar question, or throwing out a similar question. Why is it that it's easier for us to find male journalists who report football? It's the flip. For a lot of women, digital media provides the space, the time. You're able to work from wherever, however, at all times. You can work late into the night, you can work very early in the mornings, you can work while you're in the bathroom. So that helps for a lot of women because we juggle a lot. We work, we cook, we take children to school, we pick them up from school, we take them for sports. All of these you can't do if you're fixed on a desk. So for us women, what hits home is the ability to translate the time that digital media affords you to do your work and play at the same time. And I think that's what makes women more fantastic in digital media.
That sounds so attractive. I can imagine that some men are rethinking their careers now. Yes, please.
I think also that it allows you anonymity, because in some parts of the world, because of the environment in which people operate, political, media, once you put out your face there, they will mention your name, they will insult you, they will, do all kinds, they will harass you. But when you work behind the scenes, it's only people who go on your website who follow you and who will appreciate what you do. So what I'm saying is that in certain parts of the world, because of political reasons, religion, and others, people prefer to work behind the scenes, and it works for them. They prefer that instead of confronting the challenges in the open.
They could do that in print media too, though.
But in print media, you cannot hide.
Not as well as in online journalism.
It's not easy to hide in print media.
Okay.
Much more radio, much more, TV. But no,
you want to speak on the quota. This gentleman, I've promised a question, but I'm standing here and we have the quota and I see your hand. We need more mics.
I think that the issue of quota, we must take it seriously. The reality of it played out just a moment ago at the plenary, where we had an all-male-dominated, panel, and someone asked, where are the women? And it will continue to be like that if we do not take the issue of quota seriously. Quota does not speak to intelligence. It does not speak to the value that the woman brings to bear. It speaks to opportunities. Get the quota, and the best woman will be there. That's the way I see quota. It doesn't speak to the value. It doesn't speak to your intelligence. It doesn't speak to who you are. It just provides the women the opportunity to be heard. That's my view. And I think we should begin to take it seriously.
Can I add one thing? A quota doesn't have to be I believe in quotas. It doesn't have to be a formal quota. It can be an awareness that every single thing you do has to include some level of diversity. So companies should be penalized for not having people of color on their boards, for having all male boards, for having all certain people from a certain background. And I think that until those kind of quotas, until shareholders, until the public punish companies for not having diversity, companies won't be forced. Discovery, so one thing on top of my mind, Discovery Communications has one woman on their board. It's a board of 50-plus-year-old white men and one woman who's 50-plus-year-old white woman. It's atrocious. And then the company share price in the toilet. Good. It should be. And that's
this lady first.
Yeah, my name is Sandra. I'm a freelance journalist, and I'm German, but I spent a lot of time in the United States. And I kind of by coming of age as a journalist happened when the digital, in Silicon Valley, when all this happened. So you said something that I totally agree. So I don't, instead of quota, we should talk about, frame it differently. The rule is diversity. And then when you think you want to have a diverse editorial board or a panel, that should be and not thinking about quota. Now, why journalism and digital media? What I experienced was that the traditional media, they offered women jobs that were kind of like what they called women's issues, fashion, soft stories. But I didn't want to write about this. I wanted to write about business, technology, like issues. And I was not giving the opportunity in the traditional media. And I think also a lot of traditional media, they didn't believe first in the digital. They wanted to do it, but, well, let's do it a little bit. So that's gave women an opportunity to jump in. So that is good, and I think that's the result. Now for funding issues, I think this is still a problem, and also we have to make journalism again sustainable so that people can make a living out of it. So I mean, and people that now talking about funding mixtures, it's an issue. But if you want to really have quality journalism, I think it's not working with citizen journalism and blogging for free, and companies now becoming their own media houses, because there's where the money is coming from, there cannot really be objective journalism. So
you've raised a lot of very interesting points there. And as I am digesting them, in order to rephrase a question, I would like to change seats because you had to wait so long, and I would love to see a gentleman in the round. Thank you so much for keeping the seat warm in the meantime. Ajay. Let me still think about this, because there were 2 points definitely that I actually wanted to throw into the round, but I also keep an eye on the clock, so it's your floor right now.
Thank you. That's a lot of pressure. But I'll use my emotions, then I'll be spontaneous without thinking. Yeah. So for me, this, to articulate the question first, my question is towards women in leadership positions and advice to male allies who are in a situation where we are dealing with two spectrums of leadership. One is a person from a less privileged background, the other coming from a higher privileged background. Because there's my research is on inequality, and I've spent a lot of time in rural India. That's the context. And I work with women, rural women leaders in businesses. So I've seen that first, that gentlemen, those women, even if they stick to their values, the company is shutting down. So I don't know which world the values, the company is not sexy enough to attract venture capitals, right? So rural-urban divide in terms of privilege. The second question, when women in leadership positions are there and they find other women who are not coming from such privileged backgrounds, how do you suggest people like us who try to be allies can deal with it? And I will contextualize it in an example to make my point clear. The question about role models and having the opportunity of women being on the space, visible space. And in conferences, I have organized some, and I try to bring in female speakers. In those settings, there was an award. And between two women, we had to choose one, and there was a whole conflict. So as a decision maker, who finished? So it was I was professional, but the conflict was the comments I didn't know. So I know how to deal with men in the villages. I go and interview, and I shut the men off, and I listen to women, and I say, get out of the room. We need to talk. But I don't know how to deal with when I enter a room where I see this, where the comment was, she finished. She deserved the award, but you know, I don't care if she is having a baby or she had to deal with a lot of work. I deserve it better.
Okay, can we narrow this down to a question that we can immediately understand?
Okay. Yeah, too much emotion.
Yeah, too much emotion.
When there are someone like me who's there trying to work on representation and leadership, and I am conflicted between two deserving candidates, let's say. The meritocracy, the professional side favors one, but the comments from the other side is, okay, you know.
She's a woman, you have to give it to her.
Both were women.
Or she's pregnant, you have to give it to her.
Yes.
You can't do that. You have to say the best person,
yes.
The merits for your award.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you're a man, you feel like you're getting punished for it, for choosing the woman who's not pregnant.
Yes. Well, because she was deserving. She finished. You know, so the point was the competition is who finishes first. And
but that is,
so why didn't you give it to the lady? I don't think being pregnant or being a mother or political or financial circumstances plays a role. The award is for something.
Yeah.
Finishing at 5, say, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You have terms and regulations. You choose the person and you stick to it, because actually editor's decision is final, and people are very familiar with that concept. And you will always, no matter what decision you make, for better or worse, on every story you write, be criticized by someone. So you've got to grow a thick skin in that regard, and you pick the person who deserved it most. It doesn't matter about, and you feel sorry for her. Sorry, nobody wants you to feel sorry for them. They want to, no woman wants to feel like she got the award because you felt sorry for her. It's like the sympathy prize.
Well, Ajay,
so, as long as you did the right thing, right?
It's good. It was good that you were here, because you definitely made a point that when it comes to being emotional and being sensitive, it is not a purely female thing. Okay, so we clarified that. Thank you.
But also, can I make one comment? It's really gratifying to have you admit that you feel this conflict, because I think men are really willing to share equality. And I haven't met for a while a man who believes he's better. He wants women to mostly, or they say to me, to be equal with them, and including you in the conversation and being able to voice things like that. I feel conflicted because there's two really great women in front of me. Which one should I choose? A woman would have the same issue as you. So thanks for sharing that.
We have 10 minutes left, and I was told before this session that it actually would be quite nice to have a few spare minutes in case you want to catch up with one of them and have an eye-to-eye or meeting eye-to-eye and discussion. But I have one more question for you, and then maybe one show of hands from all of you. And that is, after all what we've heard, and also coming back to the women networking that Janine is doing. And simply because we have this setup of women in the media business. So obviously we still live in a day and age where we have to make that distinction. But a lot has changed, as we've learned. Are we running the risk of being ever in a position where we have the men club and here we have the women club, the jobs for the girls? Is that a danger that we run? And how big is that danger in particular in the media? And would it do the media a service? Jimena.
I think it is important that we let go of those thoughts at some point. I think it's important for women in decision-making positions to empower more women, of course, but always based on knowledge and professionalism. And it doesn't really have to do a lot with feelings, as you were saying. It has to be a passion. You have to really be passionate for the work you're doing. And you have to connect with your society. I think it's very important that we put out people that touch society, that connect to them, to the people that are related to. We want the audience to feel part of of the TV stations or what you're showing. So I think it's always very important not to focus so much on gender, but as I'm saying, I've always included women. I think that it's very important to hear the points of views of women in every single aspect of our lives, either there is science, as I was saying, or technology, as Canalonce has a lot of educational programs. So for me, it's always very important to keep a good balance and to show the role models, as I was saying. This is a very important basic thing that I believe public television should show. But definitely, I think all the decisions should not go down to gender, because then we will cause a conflict that we'll never get out of it. I totally think that our girls, our teenagers, have to focus on how to get there and how to reach these positions. And the more women we see there, the more it will open spaces for other women. That's why I was saying I don't believe in quotas as a regulations, but I believe totally in opening the doors to them. I think that when you get to positions where you can open doors to women, and especially to make more children enthusiastic about getting there, we should do that. We should never lose that position.
I do agree with what my, what's her name? Jimena said. I do agree with what Jimena said. At the end of the day, we don't want to have a situation whereby men will have to form their own clubs and everything to fight for their rights. I do believe that we need to be able to encourage women, definitely, so that they see those opportunities and go for them. They shouldn't wait and think that it will be handed down to them, because the world is not like that at the end of the day. The winners will always be the winners because they go out for things, you know. So I believe that we should be able to incorporate all of them together so that they do it. It should not be about why, because I always believe it should not be about why shouldn't I be able to tell my story, and it should always be a story about someone else. You know, so we create a situation whereby everybody should go for that opportunity so that they can live to tell their own story and be winners. You know, so I don't believe in saying, okay, we just have to do this for women. We'll go back to the same old, you know, and start fighting. The fight will start all over again. So I believe it should be open and fair to all, and people should go for that, for those opportunities.
I don't think, I know we shouldn't replicate the men's club in the women's club. It's not the world we want to create for ourselves. So diversity, inclusion, but the digital world has opened up a landscape where people gather around passions, around things that mean something to them. And if that happens to be women's things, they will gather around that. If men are interested in it, they shouldn't be excluded because they're men. So that whole, it's about diversity in every single thing you do. I do organize women's networking groups because if we are talking about issues that are pertinent mostly to women, that's who comes. Now, have I excluded men? Yes, because there's space and budget issues. But when there's no space and budget issues, men are more than welcome, because I believe we can't create a world that's single anything.
And I'd like to say that I was really lucky for all my professional life, because I was surrounded by great guys who I wouldn't like the word treated me, who were just okay, just people, normal people. And I always have I never felt suppressed. I always felt equal opportunities, and I just would like it just happen with people who are entering any sort of profession. So, and I'm for equal opportunities and the balance. And actually, I would like to say that I do like how guys think, because I'm thinking one way, they're thinking other ways, and just communicating is discussing is a great thing to reach some right decisions. So it's how it is.
And
I would like to strongly say that there's no opposition, and we should not think about it like men's club, women's club, but we have to check in every move if it's not going like that direction, because it's happening, and we have to be very careful, and that's why maybe being fragile sometimes is useful, not to make the environment to be in the opposition. I would be more than happy if we could not have the discussion like this, and we could not have the issue. It would be great. But somehow this discussion showed that it is very important to have it. And one more thing, it is also very significant that the only person in this discussion who didn't want to give back the mic, it was a man.
No. Exempt. You're exempt from that. Okay, we've got 5 minutes, and I just want one show of hands, no time for individual questions. Just a very brief, and if you like, a floppy question. Can there be ever too many women in the media? Who thinks so? Definitely not. Can there ever be too many men in the media? No. I would like to leave it at that and thank my panelists, thank Ajay Kumar from the University of Münster now. And please feel free to chat. We have this room for another 3.5 minutes. Make the most of it. Thank you. Thank you. Super. Thank you. Thank you.